Good morning, everyone. I'm Camille, the events director at the Clare, Boothe, Luce Policy Institute, and I have the pleasure of planning the Western Women's Summit each year, and it's always one of my favorite events that we host. So thank you all so much for coming, and hope you enjoy hearing from our great lineup of conservative women speakers today. And now I have the privilege of introducing Marji Ross, who serves on the board of the Clare, Boothe, Luce Policy Institute, and she is the president and publisher of Regnery Publishing, and they are the nation's leading publisher of conservative books. Marji joined Regnery in 1999 as vice president and general manager, and she took over as president and publisher in 2004. Now, during her tenure, Regnery has placed more than 75 books on the New York Times bestseller list, including 9 at number 1. Prior to joining Regnery, Marji worked as a senior group publisher for Phillips International, where she ran several business units. In her early career, she was a business editor and writer. Marji speaks frequently to students at the Clare, Boothe, Luce Policy Institute events, and she was presented with Luce's prestigious Woman of the Year Award in 2005. She's also appeared in our very popular Great American Conservative Women calendar. Marji graduated from Dartmouth College with a BA in English and earned her master's in journalism from the American University in Washington, D.C. She lives in Northern Virginia with her husband and 3 daughters. Please join me in welcoming Marji Ross.
Thank you. Good morning. That was such an inspiring session we just had. It was wonderful to hear from all of you. It just confirms what I'm going to say in my speech today, so that's terrific. Thank you for doing that in advance. And thank you, Michelle, so much for inviting me to speak here today. I'm really delighted to be here in this beautiful city, this wonderful facility. I remember coming here to the Reagan Ranch Center when it was first built for a board meeting. And we had a board meeting up in the wonderful board room before most of the exhibits were even completed. So I got to see this firsthand. It was very, very exciting. And I'm pleased and proud to be with all of you today, such an impressive group of women, of female leaders and future leaders. I always love speaking for Clare, Boothe, Luce Policy Institute. That's a privilege for me to be on the board and to speak to groups of women as I am today. And I know, particularly for the Western Women's Summit, how hard some of you have worked to get here, and how much it means to you to be here today, and for me to see so many future leaders in the room is very inspiring. As a woman business leader myself, I love to see all the future business leaders, all the women who someday are going to have my job. That's a good thing to see out in the room today. As you heard, I'm president of Regnery Publishing. We publish most of the conservative thought leaders, political, media, and intellectuals that you know of and hopefully have read. Dinesh D'Souza, David Limbaugh, Michelle Malkin, Newt Gingrich, David Horowitz, Mark Stein, Mark Levin, Ann Coulter, Laura Ingraham. The list goes on, and I've been privileged to work with all of them, and I have an update for Camille. We now have 11 books that have hit number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and thank you. The fun thing for us, of course, is that the New York Times, of course, doesn't like our books very much, and they try to ignore them when they can. When they can no longer ignore them, they give us biting and insulting reviews. But the one thing they can't ignore as much as they try is that, frankly, the majority of Americans fundamentally, in my opinion, are conservative, understand the conservative values, make sense, and they buy our books and they read these authors. And I think that's one of the reasons that we can be hopeful, as Michelle said this morning, that we can be hopeful for the future of the country. So this morning, what I'd like to talk to you about for a few minutes is the question of leadership. And I think I'd like to talk a little bit about what I think it means, what I've learned over the years about effective leadership, working with many people in leadership positions, and also in particular why I think that women make such natural leaders, and particularly conservative women. So first, I'm going to take you back to the 1950s when my mother was a young mother herself. And when she, in the 40s and 50s, when she was growing up and coming of age and looking to see what she was going to do with her life, she really had three choices. At that time, women had basically three choices of jobs, right? Much different from today. In my mother's age, women, if they wanted to pursue a career outside of the home, they could be a nurse, they could be a teacher, they could be a secretary. And that was about it. My mother chose teacher. But those, it's interesting to me because I think that those three professions, when you think about it, are built on three basic assumptions. So think about this: nurse, teacher, secretary, mom. They're built on the assumption that women are natural caregivers. They're built on the assumption that women are really only qualified to be the boss of kids and sick people. And they're also built on the assumption that a woman's primary job is being a mother. So those other jobs kind of fit nicely around that job. So let's examine those assumptions for a minute. Women are natural caregivers. True? Yes. Women are. Women are wired to be nurturing, comforting, protective. We're also wired to be strong, fearless, selfless, determined, which means that not only are we good at taking care of our families, we're also very good at taking care of our communities, our congregations, our staff, our towns, state, country. Let's look at that second assumption, that women are only qualified to be the boss of kids and sick people. Partly true, right? We're certainly very good at that, good at taking care of kids and sick people. But I would argue, in fact, that most women are probably better than most men at taking care of kids and sick people. It's a job that requires patience, diplomacy, persuasion, a sense of humor, a firm backbone, a dedication to the welfare of others, deft multitasking, creativity, and common sense. But those qualities also make us extremely good at being the boss of everybody else as well, not just kids and sick people. And then the last assumption, that a woman's primary job is being a mother. Also true. Our most important job on earth, mother. I often describe being president of a book publishing company as being my other full-time job. And I believe it's quite possible to be successful professionally and to be a successful mom. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I think that being a mom equips you, again, to be a natural leader. So a lot, of course, has changed in the country since my mother was trying to choose between nurse and teacher and secretary. Virtually any career now is open to you, to women, to me. And I tell you the same thing that I tell my three daughters. You can do virtually any job that you set your mind to. You can be the next Bill Gates, the next Donald Trump, the next Rush Limbaugh. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist. You can be president of the United States. Not first lady, that was a previous generation. You can be president of the United States. And I think that message has great excitement and great promise, but it's also one of great responsibility. Because I think if you can be president someday, you need to live now as if you will be president someday. For me, that means two things. First, assume everything you do is public. every text message you send, every email you send, every silly video you record, every time you tweet something, every time you post something on Facebook or Instagram. There's no way to keep your private life private. My oldest daughter told me the other day that she'd made a new resolution that if somebody wanted to tell her something private, they should call her on the phone and tell her in person. Think Anthony Weiner. Think Ray Rice. Think Lois Lerner. Oops, emails, oops. But to me, this explosion of social media leads to another lesson, and I think this is really the most important one, and that is, don't let technology be your moral compass. Just because you might get caught on the elevator camera, that's not the real reason to take care in what you do. The real reason is because of the respect you have for yourself and your family. The real guide is not, am I worried that this might be on YouTube someday, but is this something that I'm going to be proud of doing, even if I'm the only person on earth who ever actually knows I did it? We all make mistakes. No one's perfect. I think you'll find that both God and your loved ones will forgive you if you make a mistake and if you're truly repentant. But you have to remember that actions have consequences, and the decisions you make really do stay with you for a lifetime, even after your loved ones have forgiven you and forgotten. So choose carefully. Don't rush to judgment, especially when it comes to judging other people. Some of those old lessons from my mother's generation are still true. Don't go to bed angry. When you face a tough decision, sleep on it. When you're really angry, you write that angry email, you type it out, and you hit delete, not send. I said that you have to act as if you will be president someday. So let's think again about those traits of the nurse and the teacher and the secretary, and particularly the mom, because I actually think that if we had a president who embodied those traits, we would actually find a great leader. I think of Ronald Reagan and how he echoed so many of those traits of selflessness and dedication and firmness with a smile and a sense of humor, but a fierce determination to do what's right. We'll all be leaders someday, leaders of our families, leaders of our communities. Many of us will be business leaders, civic leaders, professional leaders. How will you lead? So my advice, lead with the compassion of the nurse. Be gentle with the people around you when they are at their most vulnerable. And make sure your goal is to help them get better, not to always be dependent on you. There's a conservative female value. Lead with the patience of the teacher. You'll do a far greater deed if you teach someone how to fish rather than just give them a fish. Another conservative principle, and another thing that requires patience, because a lot of times it's much more expedient. It's much easier and quicker to just give them the fish. But that's not what a leader does. That's not what a great leader does. Set goals clearly, communicate well, explain what success means. That's what a good teacher does. That's what a good mom does. That's what a great leader does. Lead with the selflessness of the secretary. I think great leaders understand the importance of service. Great business leaders that I have known understand that they are both at the top of an organization and underneath, supporting the organization. And nothing is really beneath them when it comes to helping other people be successful. Great leaders understand that their success and the organization that they're leading's success depends on everyone around them being successful as well. And I think that's the sort of secret lesson of the great secretary and great conservative female leaders. And finally, lead with the fearless determination and clarity of purpose of every good mother. So as an aside, I have a quick way to make every woman a staunch Second Amendment rights advocate. You ready? Here's this thought, pose this thought experiment. Imagine you're taking a hike with your son or daughter, and a man jumps out of the woods and tries to grab your kid, and you have a loaded pistol in your hand. There's really no question as to what a mom is going to do. When it comes to protecting our children, women are fearless, single-minded, and a little bit terrifying. I suggest that these 4 role models, nurse, teacher, secretary, mother, are deeply American and fundamentally conservative, which may be the same thing. And these are the 4 that I recommend to you as women leaders. So now I'm going to deliver on the second half of my promise here, which is to share with you some of the secrets of how a female leader can be a business leader and a mom. And I should start by saying there's no right or perfect answer. Everyone has to find their own way in this. Some of you will be stay-at-home moms, and believe me, you will still be very important leaders. Others will juggle home and work. And so I'll just share with you what I do, what I have found to be effective, and what I've learned. First, you've heard this before, it bears repeating, choose a good husband. One who adores you, one who respects both your mind and your heart, one who wants to share the burdens and joys of parenthood and all stages of life together. For a long time, successful female executives weren't supposed to talk about this. Somehow it made us sound weak, I think quite the opposite. But I can tell you one of my secrets to my own success is having a great husband. And that's okay. That's okay. And I'll tell you, share something else with you about myself, which some of you know, some of you may not. I got married when I was 29. It was fairly early in my career. My husband was incredibly supportive, encouraging. He was a great mentor to me. He helped me a lot with my career. He was a wonderful father to our 3 daughters. And then when I was 45, he got cancer. And 9 months later, he died. And it was shocking and horrible. But he left me with 2 things. First, he left me with the confidence that I could support our family and help my 3 daughters get through our tragedy. He also left me with the certainty, because he told me this, that he wouldn't want me to live the rest of my life alone. That was the last gift he gave me. And so eventually, I did meet someone new. And he is also wonderful, generous, supportive, very caring, conservative. And so not all that long ago, we got married. And so once again, I can tell you that part of my life's success is having a great husband. I know many smart and successful women. The happy ones also have a great husband. Second piece of advice for you, do what you love. I know it sounds hard, it's actually not. Just take my word for it. Seek it out. Make that your mission. Don't settle for a job that's just a paycheck and a time clock. Your life is too precious. Time is too short. And you can do what you love. It doesn't mean you are going to work for the perfect company on the first day of your first job. But if you work for a company whose values you share and can respect, and you find something that you're good at and you like to do within that place, that will be very rewarding, and I believe it will lead to future success. And that can be anything. You can love to put together numbers on a spreadsheet and organize things. You can love to plan events. You can, whether that's leading your daughter's brownie troop or being the cookie mom, which I was for many years for the Girl Scouts. If you do it well and with dedication and service, you will shine a light on everyone around you. A corollary to this is choose the right employer. As I said, someone whose values and mission you believe in and you care about. Again, it doesn't mean if you are an animal lover, you are going to work for the Humane Association on the first day of your job. But you can make sure that you know what the core values of the company are. Are they family supportive? Do they believe in rewarding hard work? And are they forgiving of mistakes, but wanting you to learn how to do better the next time? Those are core values that are important to find and that will make your job much more than just a job. And I think that when you approach an employer and interview for a job, the more you know about them, the more you know about what they believe, not just what they do, but please also how to pronounce their name. Regnery is not always easy. Many times I get folks who don't know how to pronounce Regnery. But do a little research about the company. It will make you feel better about whether or not you want to work there, but it'll also be very impressive to the employers when you go to interview with them and seek out a job. And they're out there. These employers are out there. I think of Tom Phillips, who was the owner of Eagle Publishing and Regnery for 20 years. He was very involved in many of the organizations that we love so much, and certainly helped, in fact, contribute to the wonderful work we do here at the Reagan Ranch Center and up at the ranch. He was a wonderful business leader, recently retired, who believed in family, believed in hard work, and believed in rewarding success. So those people are out there, and I encourage you to seek them. You should know that Regnery is now owned by Salem Communications, which is a big radio conglomerate, and they too are very mission-driven and believe in family, believe in the Constitution, believe in free markets and free speech, and those things that have made our country great. So the companies are out there, the employers are out there. If you look for them, you will find them. And I think here's a hard one for women. Another thing that I have learned that I share with you. I don't expect you to be good at this right away. It takes a long time. But at some point you have to remember, or at least realize, that you will not be able to make everybody happy all of the time. We like to make everyone happy all of the time. And over the course of your life and your career, you realize that you can't do that. So you have to be at peace with that, but also know that you're always trying your best. If you're always trying your best to do that, that's the important part. And I'll give you a few pieces of advice for future. Store these away for future when you have kids, all right? One of the things that I have done to make balancing work and motherhood successful is to involve my daughters in my work. It doesn't necessarily mean I put them to work, although I might like to, but mostly it means that I talk about what I do and I engage them in what I do. And probably being a book publisher makes that fairly easy because everyone likes books. Well, we like books, but everyone knows what a book is, and it's fun to go into the bookstore and look for mom's books, and my daughters have done that since they were very, very little. And as an aside, I think one of the most important things you can do as a mom is to make sure your kids are good readers. And I believe, like almost anything else, your children will learn by imitating you. And I think when you find children who read, it's because they see their parents read. So read. In many ways, it's as simple as that. If you love books and love reading, almost certainly your children will also love books and love reading, and that will help them in so many ways in their life. But no matter what you do, involve your kids in your job. Talk about it. Explain what it is. Make them feel part of it. Make them feel a sense of excitement and joy when you have a success or when you have an interesting problem. I used to bring home different jacket designs for book jackets and let them help me pick which jacket they like the best. And that's just, in some ways, that was my expression of my respect for them. And they have always, my three daughters have always felt that, and I think that's helped them become the strong young women that they are and future leaders like you. I also believe that every child is homeschooled. I meet a lot of kids who are homeschooled. My motto is every child is homeschooled because I think our kids learn most of their important lessons at home. And so just remember that as a parent. And the final piece of advice on parenting, at least mine, is to set very high expectations for your kids. They won't always meet them, and that's okay, and you have to make sure they know that you love them even when they don't meet them. But again, I've talked about this with my daughters a lot. Having very high expectations for my daughters is absolutely an expression of my very high opinion of them. I believe they can do great things. I know they won't always succeed. And I know that they will oftentimes be, disappointed with themselves, and that's okay. But I have always said to them that I expect a lot because I know they can do a lot, and they expect a lot of themselves now, and don't let themselves off the hook easily, which I think so many young people these days do. Okay, so in closing, I'm going to share with you a piece of advice that I borrowed from someone else. Becky Norton Dunlop gave a wonderful speech a few years ago, and one of the things that she said I really liked, and I've thought about this a lot, and I want to share it with you. She recommended that we all write down the things we believe. Just write a list. And I think it's interesting because sometimes just the act of writing down what you believe helps you clarify what's important and what are the things that you truly value and hold dear in your own life. And sometimes you'll write something and I think, no, that's not really what I believe. You scratch it up. And this list can keep evolving over time. It's not a bucket list. It's a belief list. So I'm going to share with you a few of mine. Here's what I believe, and just give you an example of the kinds of things you might think about. I believe that intolerance is a failure of courage, and I believe atheism is a failure of imagination. I believe in the healing powers of helping other people, and I believe there is far more about this world that we don't know than we do. I believe life is precious and sacred. I believe great music, great books, and great friends are necessary for the soul. I believe you cannot have a sense of humor if you can't laugh at yourself. I believe my daughters are amazing, and I believe you, all of you, each of you, will make this world a better place. Thank you very much. Thank you. I am very happy to answer questions about just about anything. Book publishing, female leaders, secrets of women that I have published.
I have a microphone.
Wait, we're being taped. I might not be able to answer this. Yes.
Is there that list? I couldn't write it fast enough. I think you believe that somewhere.
That is a great question. It's funny. I have a couple lists. I love lists. Do we all love lists? I love lists. I love crossing them off. All right. I will put that up on the Regnery website. It's just regnery.com. So I will make sure that goes up there. You're welcome. There's also a list of great books to read in college. You can find that there too. Yes?
First of all, I want to say you're wonderful.
Oh, thank you very much.
We have a
Oh, okay. And I have just a simple question. How old are your daughters?
This is my favorite thing to talk
Oh,
about.
good.
So great. My daughters are 24, 22, and 17. Two in grad school and one in her senior year of high school.
And does your second husband have any children?
And my second husband does have children, so that was the wrong answer. I have 5 children because he has 2. So together we have 5, ages 28 to 17. 4 girls and a boy. The boy was a little overwhelmed when he came into our house. We actually didn't, they were old enough so that we didn't all live together. Most of them were already off in college and working. But our son did live with us for a year, right after high school. And he just got used to lots of talking, a lot more talking than he was used to. But on the flip side, the funny story my husband likes to tell is when he moved in, he said, how much would you like me to pay for food every month? And I said, oh, don't be ridiculous. You don't have to pay for food. You're part of my family. Of course, I want you to live here. Don't be silly. And my husband said, oh, you've clearly never had an 18-year-old boy living with you. Just you wait. And yeah, we never had any leftovers anymore. We bought a lot more gallons of milk and bread, and it was great. It was pretty funny, though. That was a good learning experience.
Congratulate you for blending families.
Thank you very much. We're, again, very, very lucky. They're all really wonderful people.
I raised
And
3 children, a single mother.
yes,
And then remarried, but they were in
right.
different countries. So.
That's far enough apart, right? Yes, exactly. Other questions? Michelle?
If I had a dime for every time someone said to me, oh, Marji Ross is on your board, can you ask her to publish my book? What is the answer? I know you have a system, you
Right.
have things up on your website. Tell everybody.
Sure, I will. So anytime anyone, now you know me, so people will ask you to send me a book proposal. We publish a relatively small number of books every year. We publish about 25 new political books and about 8 history books and about half a dozen kids' books. I'll put in a plug for Regnery Kids because we just started this line of kids' books, and they are pro-American, patriotic, family values picture books for kids, early readers, 1st and 2nd grade. And they're wonderful. In fact, some of you, I think, met Susan Allen, who's one of our authors, who wrote a book called The Remarkable Ronald Reagan. And it's a wonderful book for young kids to learn about how remarkable Ronald Reagan was. And we have a whole line of really wonderful kids' books. But most people, when they approach me about publishing an adult book, the first thing I say is we don't do fiction, so that probably takes care of half of the people who want to publish with Regnery. We only do nonfiction. That's our forte, and I think part of our success really is sticking to our knitting. You know, we know how to do conservative political books and current events books. We've been doing it for an awfully long time. So, you know, if we're not good at it by now, we should probably get out and do something else. But we've had a remarkable amount of success being focused on conservative political books, and I think that's true, frankly, for any endeavor. If you focus on what you know and what you're good at and continue to do more of that, you will have much more success than kind of trying to be all things to all people. And so we look for authors who are good on the media. We know that to promote political current events books, you have to be on Fox, you have to be on talk radio, you have to be online, and so we need authors who are good at that. And there are many people who pitch us on book ideas, and they have a terrific idea for a book, but if that author isn't going to be able to sell it isn't going to be able to be an emissary, a missionary, a sort of crusader for their message on TV and radio, then chances are we're not going to publish that book. And we're also looking for books that, say something a little bit different, a little bit new, and always provocative. Our goal is to spark a debate. We want people fighting about what's in our book, arguing, debating. We want people attacking our book so that our authors can get up and defend their point of view. A lot of people in publishing, particularly in journalism, like to call themselves and boast about being objective. And I think that is, well, first of all, the hypocrisy that we were talking about earlier of, the liberal media that calls itself objective is hard to even stomach. But I also think that objectivity can be overrated. I want an author who has a point of view. That doesn't mean they make stuff up. I want it to be factual. I want it to be grounded in real life examples and real evidence and real statistics, but that's not that hard to do from a conservative point of view, as you know. But I like authors with a point of view. I like authors who have a strong opinion, and I think readers do too. I think the last thing that I give as advice to authors is to always remember that books are entertainment. And if a book in the end isn't entertaining in some way, it probably won't stand the test of time. So, yes.
Have you ever been audited by the IRS?
Surprisingly, no. You know that Clare Boothe Luce has. Yes. Go ahead.
Repeat the question. Have you ever been audited by the IRS?
Surprisingly not. And we're not a nonprofit, and I think the IRS set in their sights on the first line. The first group they went after, of course, were all the nonprofits and all the charitable organizations who were claiming nonprofit status, tax status, and they wanted to deprive us, of that. We've always been a for-profit company, so perhaps that keeps us under the radar of the IRS. But we've certainly been attacked by plenty of other places, so we're in good company. Yes.
In your market, are you seeing any current trends or themes, specific themes that are really in demand right now?
In book publishing? That's a really interesting question. The trends in book publishing, especially nonfiction, are often cyclical. So I think I said to a couple people last night that for a political publisher, we tend to do better in election years because people are paying more attention. And so our business tends to go in 2-year cycles, and we have a high watermark usually during a presidential election year. In the book business writ large, the trends seem to be a sort of bifurcation of the market. So we have a concentration of big celebrity famous authors, and then little tiny no-name authors and almost nothing in between. It's like the middle, and I think about this a lot. This has happened in a lot of America and a lot of society. The middle is the middle class. The middle of the market has disappeared. So that sort of B-level author, that sort of interesting, thought-provoking, but not famous celebrity author has the hardest time now making it in book publishing. Yes.
Could you tell us what your favorite book that you've published is?
Yes. Although this is, of course, a very dangerous question because all of my authors are now listening and they're wondering if I will say them. Okay, so the easy answer is William F. Buckley. And that is true. One of the best experiences and most amazing experiences I've had as president of Regnery was working with William F. Buckley Jr. on his last book. And we published his first book, God and Man at Yale, in 1952, I think. And then we published his last book, which was called Miles Gone By It was his autobiography. Wonderful book, beautifully written, of course, and a real privilege for me to be able to work directly with him. He was wonderful, charming, intellectual, funny. He was great, and so that's probably my favorite experience as a publisher. Some of the other books that we have published that I particularly have enjoyed and think are great. Well, one of my favorite authors that we publish is Mark Stein, because he's such an outstanding writer, and what he writes about is he's incredibly insightful and an interesting analyst of what's going on. He's also really funny. So a lot of people, I get a lot of proposals from people who say, I'm writing a funny book, and we read it and say, well, no, you're not. So it's really too bad. So it's hard to be funny. And Mark Stein is one of the very, very few writers, I think, today who has something very important to say, is always really insightful, and is funny. Dinesh D'Souza is another one of my favorite authors to work with. He and I went to the same alma mater, and I always enjoy not only publishing his books, but also talking to him about his book ideas, because he's very, very interesting. He's one of my favorite authors to talk to and debate, because he always has good reasons for his point of view, but he's also open to listening to other points of view, and he's very good at explaining why he thinks what he thinks. Michelle Malkin has been a terrific author for Regnery. We've loved working with her, and that's been a real treat. She's great. David Limbaugh, Newt Gingrich, I could go on. We have a lot of really wonderful authors that probably the best part of my job is getting to work with all of these great writers and thinkers. Thank you. Yes?
We're all familiar with these wonderful authors you're speaking of. However, how does one find out about these unknown authors that you publish for?
That is such a good question. That's part of my job, to make sure that the unknown, the future stars get visibility. And there are a couple good ways, and then I'm going to give you advance notice of something that's coming. So thank you for this question. Always on our website, regnery.com, you can go and see not only what our new releases are, but what's coming. So we have a coming soon section, and that'll preview some of the books. Secondly, the single best way that to promote our books for us is conservative talk radio. So if you regularly listen to conservative talk radio, you will probably hear a lot of our authors, including some that have something interesting to say and you might not have ever heard of them. But here's the little peek into the future. For many years, our company also ran the Conservative Book Club. And about 2 or 3 years ago, the Conservative Book Club kind of went on hiatus because book clubs in general were no longer a financial model that worked. The buy 3 books for $3, and then you ladies probably never heard of any of this, but there's an old model where people would buy really cheap the first 3 books, and they would have an obligation to buy more books over the course of a year or 2 at full price. And it was sort of a mail order business. And basically Amazon killed that business, really. Everybody has gotten into the habit of buying all their books on Amazon, and so they would look at the Conservative Book Club mailer and catalog every month, and then they'd go buy the books at Amazon. So that was not a good business model. But you're hearing this first. In January, we are going to relaunch the Conservative Book Club. And we are reinventing the Conservative Book Club as just an online community for people who love conservative books. No purchasing of books, no shipping of books. It's just a website for people who love conservative books, where you can find out exactly what you asked about, not just what's Mark Levin's next book, what's Ann Coulter's next book, what's Michelle Malkin or David Limbaugh's next book. But you can also find out about these hidden gems that you are never going to hear about in the mainstream press. You are never going to read a review in the New York Times Book Review or the New Yorker because, you know, they're conservative, and those outlets don't want to talk. They like to pretend those books don't exist. And that's the reason I think that there's a place in the market for the Conservative Book Club. And so our goal is to make it a new destination for conservative book lovers. And one of my favorite things is that when you go to Amazon and look at the categories, conservative isn't one of them.
Time for one more question.
Yes.
Are your books downloadable?
Yeah. Very quickly. All right. So one more. We squeezed in two. Yes.
Okay, so I'm a senior in college, so I'm about to go and enter the big real world, and I know there's a lot of us here. And so I guess I was kind of wondering, how did you end up in the position that you're in, and like what your path was to being president?
I will tell you quickly, I hope. I got a master's in journalism, and I wanted to go into business journalism. So my first job was as a writer for a public relations firm. And it was a public relations firm that specialized in real estate and business. So this is just an example of taking a little piece of what you like to do and finding it in the job. So even though I wasn't really interested in real estate, and I wasn't really interested in going into public relations, I could write about business. So I was a writer there. And then my next job was as an editor at the Washington Business Journal. So then that grew a little bit more. It was a lot more about business. I was editing. I was working for a newspaper that was a lot closer to what I wanted to do. So I just kept taking jobs. My goal, I'm not sure I was fully aware of this at the time, but what I was trying to do was each time the next job a little bit more of that job would be filled with all the things that I like to do. And you know, there's never a perfect job. There's never a job where 100% of your time is spent doing all the things you love to do. But if you can keep growing the percentage of the job that is things you like to do, then I think you're making a successful path. And so eventually I was a publisher of newsletters, and I was running a business unit, and had the opportunity to be publisher at Regnery. Sure. Thank you very much.